as we build upon the principles of agency and fiduciary relationships explored in the previous modules. This section focuses on one of the most essential duties imposed upon Arizona real estate licensees, the obligation to deal fairly. While fiduciary duties such as loyalty, obedience, and confidentiality apply to clients with whom a formal agency relationship exists, the duty to deal fairly extends to everyone a licensee encounters in a real estate transaction, including customers, the public, and even other agents. This universal obligation serves as the ethical foundation for professional conduct in real estate and ensures the protection of all parties, regardless of agency status. Under Commissioner's Rule R4-28-1101A, every licensee must deal fairly with all other parties to a transaction. This rule is not optional. It is an enforceable legal duty that applies to interactions before, during, and after a transaction, even when no formal agency agreement is established. The concept of fairness under this rule goes beyond honesty. It means that a licensee must not mislead, misrepresent, or conceal information that is material to the transaction, even when representing only one party. The Arizona Department of Real Estate, ADRA, enforces this rule through disciplinary actions, and violations may lead to license suspension or revocation under ARS Section 32-2153A3 for dishonest or negligent conduct. In practical terms, dealing fairly means that an agent must treat non-clients, commonly referred to as customers, with the same honesty and professional respect they give their clients. The distinction lies in the depth of duty owed. For example, when working with a buyer as a client, the agent owes fiduciary duties of confidentiality, loyalty, and advocacy. However, if the agent is representing the seller and a buyer expresses interest in the property but has no agency agreement with the agent, that buyer is considered a customer. The agent still owes that buyer fairness and honesty, but cannot act as an advocate for them. The agent must make it clear that they represent the seller, not the buyer, and that any information disclosed could be used to benefit the seller. This is why early disclosure of agency relationships, as discussed in previous lessons, is critical. Without it, a customer may mistakenly assume that the agent is acting on their behalf, leading to implied agency and potential violations of R4-2-8-1101A. Dealing fairly requires that the licensee avoid any conduct that could mislead a customer into believing they are being represented when they are not. For example, if a listing agent advises an unrepresented buyer about offer strategies or pricing, that could easily create an implied agency relationship and a conflict of interest. Instead, the agent should provide general information and recommend that the buyer seek their own representation. Arizona case law reinforces the duty to deal fairly through landmark decisions, such as Lombardo v. Albu, 1996, and Barnes v. Lopez, 1985. In Lombardo, the Arizona Court of Appeals clarified that payment of commission does not define representation. The licensee's conduct and communication do. In Barnes v. Lopez, the court emphasized the trust placed in real estate professionals and held that a licensee's actions must always demonstrate good faith and fair dealing. Even without a fiduciary relationship, the court affirmed that fairness is a legal duty derived from both ethical practice and consumer protection. These cases remind us that fairness applies universally in real estate transactions. Let's consider a common example. Suppose an agent lists a home in Tempe for $525,000. A potential buyer walks into the open house and begins asking the agent if they think the seller would accept $500,000. If the agent replies, "I think they might, but you should start lower and see what happens," the buyer could interpret that as advice and assume representation. Instead, the agent must clarify, "I represent the seller, but I can share that the property has been on the market for 30 days. If you would like representation, I can refer you to another agent in my office. This approach fulfills the agent's obligation to deal fairly while avoiding the creation of an unintended agency relationship. The duty of fairness also applies to the disclosure of material facts. Under R4 28 1101B, a licensee must disclose any information that materially affects the consideration to be paid for the property, even when representing only one party. For example, if a seller's agent knows of a roof leak that could impact the buyer's decision, fairness demands disclosure, even if it may harm the seller's negotiation position. This duty prevents misrepresentation and promotes transparency, which are central to maintaining public confidence in the profession. In the context of advertising and communication, fairness extends to accuracy and honesty in all representations. A licensee may not exaggerate, mislead, or omit important information about a property or transaction. For example, falsely stating that a home has brand new plumbing when only partial repairs were made constitutes a violation of both R4 28 1101I and the Arizona Consumer Fraud Act ARS Section 44 1522. The ADRE considers such misrepresentations a direct breach of the duty to deal fairly. Brokers play a key supervisory role in ensuring that all licensees under their employ adhere to this principle. Under R4 28 1103A, brokers must maintain reasonable supervision and control over the activities of their agents, including ensuring that all communications and transactions demonstrate fairness and honesty toward all parties. Brokers who fail to enforce these standards may themselves be subject to disciplinary action. Review summary. The duty to deal fairly, established under R4 28 1101A, is one of the most fundamental legal and ethical obligations in Arizona real estate. It applies to every interaction, whether or not an agency relationship exists. Fairness means treating all parties with honesty, avoiding misrepresentation, disclosing material facts, and making agency relationships clear from the start. Landmark cases such as Barnes versus Lopez and Lombardo versus Albu reinforce that fairness is a standard of professional behavior, not merely an ethical suggestion. Violations can lead to disciplinary action under ARS Section 32-2153A3 and potential civil liability. Discussion. Why is it important to deal fairly with customers even when they are not clients? Answer. Because fairness is a legal obligation under R4 28 1101A and ensures that all parties to a transaction are treated honestly and transparently, preserving trust in the profession. What could happen if an agent provides advice that creates an implied agency relationship with a customer? Answer. The agent could unintentionally assume fiduciary duties to multiple parties, creating a conflict of interest and violating R4 28 1101. How does the case Barnes v. Lopez, 1985, relate to the duty of fairness? Answer. It established that licensees are held to a high standard of good faith and fair dealing, reinforcing the professional and ethical expectations placed on real estate agents. Closing remarks. Fairness is the thread that ties together all aspects of Arizona real estate practice. It bridges the gap between the agent's fiduciary obligations to their client and their ethical responsibilities to the public. A licensee who consistently deals fairly safeguards both their reputation and their license, fostering trust in every transaction. In an industry built on relationships, fairness is not just good practice, it is the law.